All right, so with rumors of the potential collapse of the ACC, with Florida State apparently looking to get out of the ACC, headed to who knows. As of right now, I'd probably assume the Big Ten or the SEC, but the Big 12 has been thrown out as a wild card. I don't think that'll happen, but hey, you never know. So, with that being said, we've been reviewing here, going over a little conference realignment and expansion futures. So far, we've looked at the Big 12 and the ACC, what they could look like, what candidates they could be looking for to add. So in these lists, I've got about 10 candidates and then about 5 honorable mentions. Today, we're doing the American Athletic Conference. In the coming days, we'll be doing the Big Ten and the SEC as well. I believe that Florida State meeting is tomorrow, Friday, so I don't know if anything will come out just yet. So far, I mean, the Big Ten and the SEC have acted like they're not really interested in expanding, but money talks. And if Florida State's trying to join your conference, I'm pretty sure you're going to let them join your conference, but who knows? But today we're going to look at what ripple effects that could potentially have on the AAC. And so let's go ahead and take a look into it here. Let's go with the honorable mentions first. All right, scrolling down here, we've got 5 honorable mentions, like I said. All right, so a few of these honorable mentions you're going to be scratching your head. I know number one, definitely you're going to be scratching your head because that's my number one on pretty much the Big 12 and the ACC list was Oregon State and Washington State. Spoiler alert. But to this point, the AAC commissioner has said that he doesn't have any interest in expanding west. Okay, he wants to kind of keep in the area they're at and kind of that southeast central location with the Carolinas, Floridas, all those type of schools. Kind of try to remain a SEC Big 12 blueprint. And so as of right now, he said they're not interested in expanding west. But to keep up, they might have to look into expanding west because as of right now, you know, they're kind of I'd say median between Power 5 and Group of 5. AAC is probably the best conference, you know what I mean? Basically, you go to the AAC, make your money there, and then you move up to the Big 12. That's kind of the stepping stone as of late, you know? And as of right now, he said he's not interested in expanding west. I think that'll change because if Oregon State or Washington State come calling, I think you would have interest because that's going to get you some more money. Let's go ahead and get into it here. Number 5, Colorado State. All right, so that could get you in the Colorado market. Colorado State does make a lot of money revenue-wise for a Group of 5 school. Really, all of these schools do. And could really give you a competitor with Colorado and kind of dip your toe in, like, you know, kind of the Western front. All right, next up, UNLV. A really underrated market. UNLV set in Las Vegas. I'm really surprised they are not bigger because Las Vegas is just a huge city. And you've seen pro teams go there now. So I wouldn't be surprised if UNLV eventually makes the jump to a Power 5 conference. But until then, you could settle in the American. Number 3, San Diego State. All right, really good basketball school here. Have had some success in football, but their main degree is basketball right now. Made the Final Four last year. They've had Kawhi there before. Great basketball school. And like I said, football, every now and then they're okay. Number 2, Air Force. All right, also out in Colorado. So you've already got a couple of, you know, the armed forces schools. So why not bring in Air Force as well? All right, because you've got Navy, you've got Army now. So why not bring in Air Force? And Air Force is actually, believe it or not, the highest rated Group of 5 school as far as revenue-wise. They make a lot more money than any other Group of 5 school. And they're usually pretty good at football. So it would definitely be an interesting add if you added Air Force. And with that being said, pretty much 2 through 5 here. I think if you choose to expand west, I think you add all 4 of these teams just to kind of set your bases all over the West Coast, you know. And so pretty much you create like a barrier there between, you know, everybody that's in California and then all of these schools right here, besides San Diego State, obviously. But other than that, you would just create a barrier of American Athletic Conference schools all over the place that kind of almost mines throughout. Like maybe we can create a pipeline there, maybe we can create a pipeline there and kind of creep into California a little bit. All right, number 1 on my honorable mention list, Oregon State and Washington State. So like I said, they were number 1, spoiler alert, on my Big 12 and ACC list. They've kind of just already got a leg up on everybody because they're, at the moment, they're kind of borderline Power 5, borderline Group of 5. They got left out of expansion at the moment. The Pac-12 left them for dead. I assume eventually they're going to end up in the Big 12. That's going to be my guess. But until that happens, Who knows? So as of right now, they've said they're basically going to join the Mountain West in football for the next 2 seasons, and they're going to join the WCC in basketball for the next 2 seasons, which is Gonzaga, St. Mary's, San Francisco, Portland, all those schools out there. So it would definitely be an interesting ad. Like I said, they've already kind of got a leg up on all these other Group of 5 schools because they've already been Power 5 before. So they have a little better recruits, have some better facilities, kind of already got their foot in the door. All right, so let's go ahead and look at the actual list here. Start number 10. Where is it at? Right here. Number 10, Appalachian State. All right, so a really good football program here, Appalachian State. They don't make as much money as I expected them to because they are really good at football, but they're still relatively new to the FBS. Yeah, they've been in it for 10 years, but they're still relatively new, so I guess that kind of impacts it a little bit. And really just location, because there's a lot more schools in the Carolinas once you start digging through these Group of 5 schools. There's a lot more than you think in that Virginia and Carolina area. And so Appalachian State, really good football program, would be a quality ad, and really could kind of give you really give you a chance. Again, they could be a contender for, that New Year's Six berth. As far as how it's going to be now, it'd be a potential contender for the playoff berth, since the Group of 5 is going to have an automatic in the next 12-team playoff. Appalachian State, you could probably do worse than them. All right, number 9, South Alabama. All right, so if you were asking me to rank these football teams, Appalachian State would be a bunch above them, above a bunch of these teams. But when I was looking at the revenue numbers, South Alabama somehow makes a lot more money than Appalachian State does. And so that was kind of every program combined, So we're not talking just football. If we were talking just football, Appalachian State probably has a leg up on some of these teams. But South Alabama kind of got an interesting blueprint in Alabama. You've already got UAB there. You could add South Alabama. No, you're not going to take any recruits from Alabama, the Crimson Tide, but you might could sneak a few, 3 or 4 stars here and there that are not going to be able to start right away at Alabama. You might could get them to say, hey, you're not going to start right away at Alabama, but why don't you come here and be a 4-year starter, or a 1-year starter, then transfer. That's probably what happened now. But South Alabama, an interesting option. Number 8, Buffalo. So again, we're not looking to the West because at the moment, the commissioner said he's not interested in that. So we're staying on the East Coast, kind of that central south East Coast. Basically, Texas up and to the right, if you look at the map, is kind of what we're looking at here. But Buffalo actually makes a ton of money as well, revenue-wise. Not that good of a football program, but they're usually pretty good at basketball. But could definitely bring you some money because there's not as many teams out in that area when you start creeping up the East Coast. So Buffalo could definitely be an intriguing option because, like I said, there's not a lot of just outstanding schools all the way out there right now in football. Because, you think of it, we got Syracuse. I know I'm missing some people, but really they're kind of mainly more northern central, Michigan, Ohio State. But the further east you get, there's really not that many great football teams in college football. I guess Notre Dame, All right, next up, FIU, Florida International. So you get another team in Florida. As of right now, you've got FAU. Ignore that. Sorry. My alarm's going off. As of right now, you got FAU. I don't know why my alarm's going off at this time. But FAU, you've got USF. UCF just left you to the Big 12. But you kind of have, like we talked about earlier, a bunch of different minds as far as if a kid is close to this school, you might could pull him in instead of him going to Florida or Florida State because it's more proximity-wise. It's a better solution for him to go to FIU, And also, like I said, FIU, similar to South Alabama, really surprising when I was looking at the revenue numbers, just how much money these teams make. 6, Georgia State. All right, so you get in that Georgia area. As of right now, you got Georgia and Georgia Tech that are kind of bigger schools. Sorry, I got to catch my breath here. But Georgia State has had a lot of success in football as of late. They've been fairly good. Actually had like a top 10 rusher this year. He's transferring out. But if you come to the AAC, he might not transfer out. But Georgia State, similar as the other teams, they make a lot more money than I expected when I was looking at the revenue numbers. I'll try to show you all that list at the end of this if I can find it. I'm not sure if I'll be able to or not, but I'll try to. All right, number 5, Coastal Carolina. Speaking of a team that's had a lot of success in football as of late. All right, now they did lose their coach, Jamie Chadwell, so that's going to impact it a little bit here. If they could have kept him, and if they would have been here already, they could have kept him. But he jumped ship from Coastal to Liberty because Liberty's a little higher up the food chain as far as a better program, but apparently not money wise because, like I said, otherwise they'd be on his list. Coastal Carolina, though, pretty solid program in football at the moment. They did lose their quarterback, Grayson McCall, which has kind of been, the lead racer in that, but definitely a good option to kind of stay in that little Coastal Carolina, that Carolina, Virginia area. All right, for Old Dominion, not the greatest football program, but this program makes a ton of money. They're in the Virginia area as well. Surprisingly, like I said, could bring you in a ton of revenue. And once they get here, might could kind of elevate their football program a little bit. All right, number 3. All right, so this one is really shocking to me. All right, so whenever I was going through the list, UMass is one of the top group of 5 revenue schools, which is really surprising and would be an easy solution here. They're currently independent in football. I think their football program might have went away for a little bit. I might be tripping there. I don't know. But anyways, one of the bigger revenue schools. They're independent currently, so it would be a smooth transition. You don't have to pay a buyout or anything like these other schools to get them to leave their conference. They're independent. You go ahead and bring them in, bring in a ton of money, and get some teams on that East Coast that aren't necessarily Central East Coast, like the Carolinas, Virginias, kind of creep up a little bit, slowly start planting pipelines up in the East Coast. You think New York area, Connecticut area, Maryland, kind of slowly creep up in that area. All right, number 2, James Madison, a program really on the rise as of late. New FBS school, but they've got a good football program. They've got a good basketball program, one of 3 currently unbeaten teams in college basketball. James Madison, kind of a sleeper right now. All right, so they've made a huge impact, like I said, right when they've gotten the FBS. This is only, I think, their second year in the FBS. Have been in the top 25 at times since they've been here. Made a bowl game. Did recently lose their coach to Indiana, but they brought in a pretty good replacement in Holy Cross's head coach, which has won a ton of ball games. He's pretty young too. And James Madison, you can do worse than them. They're in Virginia as well. But like I said, you bring in a good basketball program, bring in a good football program, and they're new. They're on the rise. They're kind of – everybody's talking about them right now because they are new and they are having a lot of success. So why not capitalize on that success? All right, number 1 here, a team they actually have talked to before. All right, then kind of has been in sort of this conference before, being in the old Big East, UConn. All right, so UConn won the national championship last year in basketball. Football-wise, they currently have not been as good, but they're kind of creeping back up a little bit. They've had a little success here and there. I think their coach currently is Jim Mora. But UConn, you bring in a basketball powerhouse. You bring in somebody that brings in a ton of revenue, football and basketball-wise. UConn would kind of help you elevate. Again, we're talking about creeping up that East Coast kind of. UConn could help you out a ton there and would really make you relevant in basketball as well, which currently they're not. AAC's a pretty good football program, or football conference. Like I said, kind of that barrier between Power 5, or really Power 4 now, Power 2, and Group of 5. But really good basketball school, could elevate you there a lot and help you kind of bring in more money in that aspect. We're not just focusing on football. All right, but that is my list for the top 10 plus 5 honorable mentions for what the AAC could be looking to expand and realign to if this realignment scenario that's currently coming out with the AACC, not AAC, ACC collapsing, Florida State, Clemson, Miami, North Carolina, NC State, and Virginia, all potentially going to the Big Ten or SEC or splitting. And then the rest, what I think will happen is they'll end up in the Big 12, probably what's going to happen. But let me know if you're an AAC fan who you think they should get, who you want them to get. Let me know. Comment down below your candidates, like this video, and subscribe.